and the Yukon Guardian programs that have developed or are in development. So I've had the opportunity to visit the Cascadene and Ross River. I've had the opportunity to visit the Satu Dene and Fort Good Hope. I've had the opportunity to visit with the Dehcho and my friends there. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity to go visit Thaidenenene with the Flutsuke Dene. And I'm also looking forward to the opportunity to visit Delene and the Satu Dene there and their initiatives. So this video is an opportunity for us just to see a little bit what's happening in the Northwest Territories and across the country, and a summary and hopefully a bit of inspiration for the work that you do. Masicho.
For Indigenous peoples, the land where we are from is at the heart of who we are. We are as much a part of the land and waters as the many animals and plants of this earth. When we look out over the land and waters, we feel its spirit in our souls. It guides us and it cares for us. And we are now in a time when we must do our best to continue to care for the land just as our ancestors did before us. The impacts of climate change, the decline of caribou, and the pressure on our fish and waterways and our forests make it all the more urgent to take action. The Indigenous Leadership Initiative is helping Indigenous peoples with the responsibility of land stewardship in a way that is informed by our ancestors, but with the tools of the modern world. We are doing this by being the watchers and the guardians of our traditional lands and territories, to help manage wildlife areas, to protect the land, and to educate the world about the relationship between humans and Mother Earth.
As an Indigenous Dene person, the way the Cascas, and we're naturally land stewards. It's our inherent duty. It's a responsibility we have to protect our land.
And their role is to protect the land in the summer, to protect the water, and to let visitors and people that are in our area just share knowledge of our traditional territory and stuff like that, just protecting the land, the animals, the fish, the water.
There are currently more than 40 Guardian programs throughout Canada. The Coastal Guardian Watchman is a network of Guardian programs that protect the Pacific coasts and improve their communities. The Haida Nation is one of the network's members. They have the longest running modern Guardian program in the country.
In the way of the designing of the program in the early years, we wanted the youth and the elder together, because the elder would be able to teach the youth during the time they're together, and then the youth would be able to help the elder in the camp chores and be able to make that, a place to enjoy.
So the work of the Watchman reinforces Haida nationhood simply by us getting back in its land, in the ancient villages, and by managing human activity on those lands.
Now, Guardians are caretakers of our traditional territories. They test water quality, they restore wildlife, they monitor mines and big development, and they're ambassadors of our lands when tourists visit. This work blends both traditional knowledge with Western science. There are many tools available for Guardians.
We work with the institutions like universities in terms of monitoring land mass, in terms of contaminations, in terms of research, in terms of forest management planning as well.
It is going to ensure, I think, that the land, the water, the wildlife is going to be monitored and managed and taken care of by the very people who were born of it.
Communities connecting to the land is also about teaching the next generation to be healthy and strong in their culture, so that the foundation of the community going forward is solid.
If there's healthy people that are happy and strong in their culture, and if they receive that from being on the land, then it's a huge investment. You're investing in a society, a better society, and a better tomorrow.
We're starting, with individuals that we train as guardians, and those individuals, that in turn inspire others in the community. The community as a whole benefits by this program growing.
The beauty of this type of land stewardship is that each community can design a program for their own needs. And the programs have created much needed employment opportunities.
It went from just an opportunity to get into the territory to actually monitoring and finding out that I enjoyed that part of the job and being able to go back to the community and let people know what's happening out in the territory.
Being a guardian is being out on the land where your ancestors have lived for many centuries, and just to reconnect with Mother Nature and how your people lived off the land. That's one of the best things about being a guardian.
There are new Guardian programs starting across the country, like the recent Sahtu Guardians Winter Gathering at a bush camp.
Being a guardian to me is just helping one another, growing a strong community, not only for us now, but for my grandkids when they get older, and knowing that they have a place like this to come to.
Many Guardian programs manage Indigenous protected areas, places Indigenous nations have identified for conservation. The Dehcho First Nation are the latest with Indigenous protected area in the country. It also marks a new type of relationship between Indigenous peoples and Canada.
It makes government stronger, it makes industry stronger, it gives everybody a chance to make better decisions on land and how we're managing our interactions with the land and the water.
Indigenous Guardians are at the forefront of a movement growing up from the land, from the elders, from the youth, and from a new crop of women leaders, all calling for Indigenous leadership on the land. By caring for our land and waters, we are strengthening ourselves and our nations. The Indigenous Leadership Initiative is proud to be a part of this journey.
Time I'd like to call up the panelists for the panel. And while I do that, I'd also just like to say a merci to Valerie for the opportunity and also for voicing that video. You did excellent. Also, it's our opportunity to say merci, and it's an honor to be here. It's amongst the Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, and the Squamish First Nations. Thank you for hosting this inspiring gathering and to be amongst all you inspiring people. Kristen, Tanche, Aston. Bobby Overvold and Bobby Gould, can you please join us? Bobby Gould is from the Mi'kmaq in Nova Scotia, Cape Breton. Bobby Overvold represents the Sahtu Nation Guardians Initiative in the Northwest Territories. Bob, yes, thank you. When we have Heidi Quock from the Misipawistik First Cree Nation in Manitoba, Dehcho First Nations representative Kristen Tanche, and Jarett Quock from the Tahltan Nation is a guardian there. And welcome everybody to the panel. So today's panel is a chance for all of us to hear from them. They're all at various levels of guardianship work in the country. So I will leave it to them to introduce themselves, and I'll start with you, Mr. Overvold. Should be a microphone tucked in the seat there. You guys will show me. There we go.
Bob Overvold. I'm working with the community of Fort Good Hope. We're trying to establish a permanent Indigenous protected area. We're very hopeful we'll have that done by this coming August. And I'm going to talk a bit about guardians in the context of protected areas.
Tanche, kananato apit nitsinakasan, Misipawistik nitostin and maskanetotem. My name is Heidi Cook. I'm a councillor for the Misipawistik Cree Nation and formerly lands director. My name, as I introduce myself, translates to one who sees all around, and I'm from the Bear Clan. My home, Misipawistik, it means Grand Rapids, and I'll introduce you a little bit to where I come from as well. We can't talk about our home without talking about the fact that there is no more rapids. And part of my journey has been learning about this specific part of our history. The Grand Rapids are at the mouth of the Saskatchewan River as it reaches Lake Winnipeg. We're on the northwestern shores of Lake Winnipeg. 60 years ago, the abundance of the fishery was compared to the salmon runs here on the west coast. We're fishing people, the sturgeon, and the whitefish, the pickerel, the jacks. That was a staple of our way of life. 55 years ago, the rapids were silenced. They were dammed for hydroelectricity, and we lost not only our river, big portion of our lands. We lost our pride in being Cree and being good fishermen because it was no good to fish anymore. My generation, we lost our language, and I grew up with this sense of anger and loss of what happened to our people. I didn't understand until I was in my 20s, the first time I saw pictures of the rapids, and they were beautiful. They were huge whitewater rapids that went on for miles, lined with these gorgeous white limestone cliffs and low places where people could scoop fish from the banks. And I live half a kilometer from a generating station. When I go to sleep at night, I can hear the hum of electricity instead of the singing of the rapids. That was the sound that soothed my people for thousands of years. We were there as the ice retreated from the glaciers. That's where we made our home. Since then, I've worked on projects like repatriation. The bones of our ancestors, their graves that were destroyed by machinery and taken in secret. They were held in shoe boxes in the university, along with the faunal remains, moose bones, and others. At the time that we buried them at the foot of the rapids, the spillway was open, so there was a hint of the former glory of the Misipawistik. And I got the chance to go on a boat and started going up the rapids, and I felt the power of the water pushing against our boat, and it made me cry for what I lost. My birthright was taken from me. I have a longing for something that I never knew, my language. And in their grief, my elders held on to what they could. And we have a beautiful territory. We have a big lake with sandy beaches, pebble beaches, limestone cliffs. We have thousands of birds that sing in the summer. They come from across the continent and they nest here. They make their homes with us. They raise their babies there. We still fish, we still hunt. And to me, what we have left is everything. I love it all. I love it all. It's the reason why I'm here today. When hydro came, my people were powerless to stop it. And here's a spoiler alert. The reason why I love the Guardians program so much is because we're taking our power back. Thank you.
Merci. Kristen, Tanche, Suje, Thidukwe, Gotseate, Semo, Kathy, Tanche, Uje, Seta, Gunnar Paulson, Uje. My name is Kristen Tanche. I'm from Fort Simpson, Thidukwe, Northwest Territories. My mother is Kathy Tanche, and my father is Gunnar Paulson. Thank you to the people of this area for welcoming all of us here. I was telling my family members that I was going to be a part of a panel discussion and that David Suzuki was going to be up before us. And they were like, holy, David's opening for you guys? And then I told someone else, and they were like, gee, you have to follow after David Suzuki? Like, so here we are. I'm currently working for Dehcho First Nations. I'm part of the Tlutokay. I'm sitting beside Tlutokay people. I'm part of the Tlutokay First Nation and work for Dehcho First Nations as one of 2 acting resource management coordinators. Dati Tetso, Amos's sister, many of you probably know, we like to say that she did the job of 3 people, and it's now taking 2 of us to take over in her role at Dehcho First Nations. Dehcho KOND translates as taking care of the Dehcho. It's a community-led and driven program that aims to promote the traditional way of life and stewardship responsibilities over unceded Dehcho lands, while providing language and cultural immersion opportunities for youth and others who are committed to this way of life. It is focused on implementing land-based management of the region in ways that honor and respect the Dene perspective of the land. I really wanted to briefly touch about what the heart of the Dehcho KOND is. So back when people in the region began talking about this, it was really important that culture and language be at the forefront of everything that the Dehcho KOND is and does. And so from that, there's 3 founding principles of the Dehcho KOND, and the first one is Dene laws, values, and principles. The second one is Dene language, and the third is elder and youth mentorship. So these principles are at the core of the work that we do within the Dehcho KOND. They're the words of our ancestors, carried by our elders and our cultural knowledge holders, our land users, and our community members. I was contemplating on how guardian programs and how the Dehcho KOND benefit people in the region. So I asked Jonas Antoine, who's actually here today. He's one of our elders, our harvesters, our cultural knowledge holders, and someone who I consider to be a mentor. And he told me there are no words. There are no words to explain what it feels like to be on the land. It's a spiritual experience. That's why we struggle so hard to explain it to people, because there are no words. And I thought that was a really insightful way to frame it. I believe to fully appreciate the benefits of guardian programs and on the land programs and how they affect people, the best way to experience that and to feel it is to go out on the land and to be with those people to experience it firsthand. How can one understand the importance of guardian networks and programs without experiencing it or feeling it? The first time I felt connection to my ancestors' territory was when I was on the Dehcho River. I had spent a month paddling down the Dehcho with addition to a river semester. It was then on the river that I felt the power of my ancestors, and when I really learned how to speak to the land, love the land, and appreciate it, especially the traditional territory I was from. I'd never spent extensive time exploring the areas that my ancestors had lived. We were at the Willow River area where Jonas Antoine actually lives, and that's where my great-grandfather Achia had once lived. Jonas and Tony Bitsidia were showing me the exact spot that my great-grandfather Achia had lived. I got to stand in the same spot that he had been. For someone who grew up so disconnected from their culture and their language and their way of being, that feeling, I'm trying to put it into words, but it's so hard to explain. You had to have been there. And so when Jonas said those words to me, I really thought of that time and that feeling. And how people were always telling me that connection to land is so important. And it wasn't until then that I really got it, that I really started to feel the power of where I was from and the people that had walked on the grounds before me. Because of my experience, I really think that it is my duty to help in any way possible to assist in advancing initiatives like the Dehcho County and land-based experiences for everyone. I believe that these experiences should be available to everyone and anyone. And I think it's my duty and my generation's duty to uphold the voices and to have the words of our elders, our leaders, and cultural knowledge holders lead all the work that we do. In our area, elders say yanda goa, which means for the future. That the work they have done and the work that they do is for the future. I think that Guardian programs are exactly that, yanda goa. We are taking care of our lands, our people for the future. That gives me hope. Hope for the future of all generations. Masi.
Good morning. My name is Jarett Quock. I'm a member of the Tahltan Nation up in northern British Columbia. Ishnaglaw is my Tahltan name. I'm from the Crow clan. Some of you might remember me from a couple of years ago that I have to correct that because I might have lied to you a little bit. Is that I said I was 2 weeks prior hired to the first Guardian program, but it was 2 weeks. It was 2 weeks prior to my field session. So I was hired a couple months before then, and I didn't really know what a Guardian program was or had any idea at all. The Tahltan Nation is kind of well known we have a lot of mines and gold and copper mines up in our territory. And so that's where my background is. And with the way I grew up around my family and my elders, I was always out on the land. My family owns a guide outfitting business up in north of Telegraph Creek. So I was always out on the land, and this job came up. And I was on my time off then, and I seen the opportunity to open new doors for myself. And I think the real challenge that I was looking for, I was just switching from being an operator and starting to work in the office a little bit. So that was in 2016. I was hired then, and after the first Guardian gathering, I walked away with a lot. Networking with everybody, and I walked away with a really good idea on how I was going to build our Guardian program for my nation. So I went on from there, 3 years. We just finished my third year in the field, and a lot has grown from then. But when I first started in the Guardian program, we only kind of focused around helping with conservation efforts. But now we have a few other programs that we're able to take on now. And in the Guardian program, when I first started in 2016, it was just myself. Now we have two full-time Guardians, and at our peak season we have 6. So we've been working really hard within the Guardian program, and it's come a long ways. My perspective on a Guardian program, always, after the couple of years and really understanding what a Guardian program is, Mother Earth is already broken up into pieces, like a puzzle piece, you know. And I always look at it like that, and all those pieces represent. They're all different shapes. And that represents all of our boundaries as nations. And before the white settlement came in and the fire water, we were all as pure as the animals that we ate and the water that we drank. We were part of that ecosystem. And for that part of the territory, or for that part of Mother Earth, it takes one unique person, or it takes a unique group of people to really keep that area pristine as it is. And I always think that as an Indigenous person, that's what our role is. You know, we were part of that system before any of the settlement came in. We had to live off the land. We had to drink the water that runs on the ground. And that's kind of my perspective on the Guardian program and in being as First Nation. And it's our duty and our responsibility to keep it the way it is and for it to keep us alive and healthy as well, with that, protecting a lot of the environment and the wildlife. As you protect that, you keep yourself and your nation healthy as well. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to say is what first of all, I'd like to say thank you for inviting me up here to your territories. I'd like to discuss what we do back home as Guardians. Well, first and foremost, my name is Bobby Gould. I'm with the Waycobah First Nation, Mi'kmaq. I'm a fisheries operation manager. I've been directly, indirectly involved with the Guardian program since 1992. And from our district of Unama'ki, there's only 3 of us that are here from that program. Either other people moved on, or God forbid, they passed away. But it shows that there's a few people that believe in this Guardian program. And the number one thing that we look after in the Bidor Lakes, we call in Unama'ki, is the Atlantic salmon. And they're under the species at risk right now. And throughout the whole Nova Scotia, the province of Nova Scotia, we only have one river where we're allowed to fish for salmon, and that's the Margaree River. And people from the mainland would have to come onto the Cape in Unama'ki to fish it, and there's only a small quota for Atlantic salmon. And when I was listening to people here since yesterday, I was amazed to see how much salmon that the Indigenous people out west here thrive on. Where we're at, back home, we're trying to protect them. So I look at Guardians back home as stewardships in regards to these species. And like I said, thank you very much for inviting me. Walalio.
Thank you, everyone. So just a quick note. We have 2 Bobbies on the panel. We've got Bobby Gould and Bobby Overvold. Bobby O, we like to call him in the Northwest Territories. I hope you're okay with that today. All right, Bobby O. Want to just tell us a little more of what's happening in the Satu?
So much for understanding the program. I thought we were just introducing ourselves at the beginning. But anyway, as I said, I wanted to talk a bit about Guardians more in the context of protected area. You saw Amos's video there, and a Dehcho protected area. It was established this July, I believe. Well, the next one is going to be in Fort Good Hope. It's called Tuyeta. It's about 10,000 square clicks, and we've been negotiating that for quite a while. The community has been trying to get it protected for well over 20 years. And it's only been in the last year that Guardians have become part of the equation. And the Satu, we're from, we didn't know about Guardians, but we're starting to know, and we are going to catch up. What I'd like to do right now is just acknowledge some colleagues that are down here with me. We have Grand Chief Wilfred McNeely, who's also the Chief of Fort Good Hope, but he's the Grand Chief for the Sato Dene Council. I think he's here. If you could stand up and right there. He's been providing leadership on getting guardians going in the Sato region. And with them are two young gentlemen who just recently went through a 4-week Guardians training program. We've got Mitchell Shea and Daniel Jackson, I think, yep, right there. This past January, February, they took part in a 4-week training program on Guardians. And it was an interesting one because prior to Christmas, we had a facility all lined up, heated, etc., classrooms, and they were going to be trained in this facility. And then at the 11th hour, it disappeared. And so the chief said, well, we still got to do this, get the money for it, we're going to do it. So they decided to do it just outside of Good Hope, where there were 2 shacks, sort of a cook shack and a meeting room shack. And when I say shack, I mean shack. These aren't fancy buildings. So what they did is put up wall tents, put up airtight heaters, put spruce boughs down on the ground, and that's where they stayed for the 4 weeks, in spite of 30, 35 degrees below weather. I mean, they all pitched in, helped each other, and got through the 4 weeks. So kudos to them. They starting to know about Guardians. I know Daniel and Mitchell have been very keen. I've been talking to a lot of the Guardians down here. I'd just like to also mention that this summer there was a community Fort Good Hope 2-day Guardians workshop led by Stephen Cackfoy. And one of the messages that came out over and over again is we have to get families back on the land. Not just the parents, but they got to bring their kids on the land. And that struck a chord with me because in the early 1980s, 1980, 1981, in the fall time, I was hired as a band manager in Fort Good Hope. And one of the things I did in the fall was for a full week, we'd have a twin otter come into Good Hope and bring families out in the bush where they would trap. Some of them came back at Christmas, went back out, and would come back in the springtime. But 2 or 3 times a day, a twin otter, would go out with the family. And that would happen for the full week. That doesn't happen anymore. In the last number of years, you may have individuals going out once things freeze up and they go out by skidoo. But getting, 10, 20 families, 30 families to go out just doesn't happen anymore. And I was wondering why that's the case. And by talking to people, talking to elders, they said, well, the system, the school teachers told us we couldn't do that. You need to have your kids stay in town so they could get educated. But what I'm hearing from the elders and the families is that's not actually happening. That there's got to be a better way of educating children, not just having them stay in town. And so the discussion that has been taking place has been, is there a way to establish a better education system? Fort Good Hope is negotiating a self-government agreement which is going to include an education program. And there's talk about, in this day and age, there's no reason why, with the technology we have, you can't have cell towers put up out in the bush. You can't have curriculum developed so that when kids are out in the bush with their parents, part of it could be to not only be part of a education program in the schools, but also in the bush. So I think that's what they were talking about this summer when they talked about we got to get families back out on the land. The social environment in a lot of our small communities including Fort Good Hope, can be very toxic for young people because of drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and that type of thing. And I think parents are seeing that and saying, how do we deal with that? And they're thinking about how they were brought up on the land. So they're talking about, we got to get our kids, get our families back on the land, get them grounded so they can get away not all the time, but at least for a big chunk of the time from this type of thing. Just quickly on the protected area, Amos, give me another minute. I don't know why I did these notes. I do it every time. I never use them. Climate change got me to think about it, the video we looked at this morning. It's pretty well acknowledged that in the Arctic, in the north, the impact of climate change is far more severe than down south. And we're seeing that in Tuyeta. Another name for Tuyeta is the Ramparts area. And right in the middle of that area we're trying to protect is a huge wetlands area. It's a very important staging area for waterfall and that type of thing. And there used to be just tons and tons and tons of black ducks, songbirds, you name them, in the area. Over the past 2 to 3 years, they've pretty well disappeared. I've talked to people who went up that area this summer, and there's no more black ducks, there's no more songbirds, and things are just disappearing. So besides trying to protect the area, the community wants to understand why that is happening, and is there a way to remediate that? And we have partners who are willing to work with us. One of them being Ducks Canada Unlimited, who we've been meeting with, and they're prepared to come and work with the communities, and we want to do that through a Guardians program. So I'll just leave it at that for now. Thanks, Amos.
Merci, Bobby. So one of the reasons I'm always inspired by guardianship programs is that emotion that's already been shown here today, is that intimate connection we have with the land. As guardians, as Indigenous peoples, we are very much a part of the land. And then when I was at NORAD 10 for their winter Guardians training camp, there was a lot of talk about healthy communities, and you've mentioned it already. And so it's the two things. It's the healthy communities and then taking care of our land so it grows. And Jarett, I just wanted to ask you, yesterday we had a conversation while we were standing in line and come around for the circle. And you had mentioned something, and I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, but you had said, if I weren't a guardian, I think my life would be different. You want to tell everybody what you were telling me there?
I'll be glad to. Well, like I said prior to this, I was a heavy equipment operator. So if this job opportunity didn't come up, I would be still sitting there like this, right? This job opportunity and being a guardian it helped me out a lot. Personal reasons too, to help me overcome some of the addictions. It helped me connect with the land. It brought pride to me when you're able to go and at the end of the day go back home and feel like you have done something for the right, that needs to be done. And a few other, it helped me connect with the land and to the people and doing things positive in the right way. The personal gain is so awesome that yesterday I had my last phone call and I was able to purchase a house for me and my family. Yeah, taking on this job, I always believe in if you do a good deed, at a certain point, a good deed is going to come back, right? I took a massive pay cut to take on this job, and it took me a long time to adapt to it. But in saying that, I was able to walk away with the pride and pride of being a First Nation for first most. And like I said, it helped me get through some of the tough times in my life, just being connected to the land and being able to go out and talk to a lot of the elders and listen to their stories. And like I said, yeah, it's self-benefiting, and like a good deed came back to me yesterday. So.
Yeah, man. Thank you for sharing that with everybody. I was lucky enough to join Kristen for a couple of days on the river this summer, and you were with a number of youth, and you were leading a canoe trip from Fort Simpson, Tlitliquin, to Wrigley, Pidziki. Tell us a little bit about what you saw those young people experience, and how you were trying to teach them about being guardians.
So this summer, as Amos said, we did a canoe trip for youth aged 18 to like 30 from Fort Simpson to Pidziki to join the Dehcho Assembly. So the Dehcho Assembly brings together all of the Dehcho communities to meet in one place, and it happens once a year. So there's leaders, community members, family, everyone in the Dehcho is in this one location. So we brought 11 people within that age range, along with elders and cultural knowledge holders, health and wellness, language facilitators, all on this canoe trip. Earlier I was talking about the Dehcho Kayandi principles, and so when I'm organizing regional on-the-land programming, I always have those principles at the forefront, and I'm always trying to make sure that everything that I help program has those principles. And so during the trip, one of our principles is Dene values, laws, and I was thinking back on it and where did I see that being embodied? At one point we had landed for the night. It was a long day. And there is spruce bough, but it was like up on a hill. One of the male participants, I saw him going up, bringing back spruce bough, putting it down for some of the older people in our group and some of the ladies and other people, and then going back up and down, up and down. He didn't put down spruce bough on his tent site or put up his tent until everybody had spruce bough. And I thought, holy man, that's the perfect embodiment of Dene values and laws and principles. Then Dene language is one of our other principles. And throughout the trip, we had a language facilitator who is working with the participants, but also other people on the trip that knew our language were speaking it. And they were practicing with them. A lot of the participants had like little knowledge of Dene Jati to some basic comprehension. Some could speak a bit more. But at the end of the trip at the Dehcho Assembly, again, so many people there, family members, leaders, and just everyone, they got up in front of the whole Dehcho Assembly and introduced themselves in their language, which was amazing. You should have seen the faces and the happiness of the people at the assembly. Some people were crying to be able to hear like the younger generation speak the language. And then another one of the principles is elder and youth mentorship. So on that canoe trip, we had elders and youth. People were showing some of the participants like what spruce bough to get, like how to get up there, where are they putting their tents. We would be watching where the elders and cultural knowledge holders would be putting their tents on the riverbank and mimic what they were doing. There was a lot of interaction. There was a short clip of some of the participants laying down tobacco. And so that was something we did every single morning with one of the elders leading our group. So yeah, that was how we really ensured that some of those principles were embodied with some of the programming that we do.
Masi. The reciprocal relationship we all have with the land is what I'm noticing in guardianship is it changes as you start doing guardianship. And I know both Bobby G and Heidi have some different experiences from within their First Nations about dealing with fish. Heidi, if you can start, and then I'll ask you a specific question about it as well, Bobby. And we chatted a little bit about some work that you guys had to do on the Saskatchewan River. I'll let you share it with people. I don't want to give it away.
Okay. When we started planning our Guardians program, the fishery on the Saskatchewan River, was identified as one of our top issues that we needed to address. And it's a former spawning ground, but there's a fish hatchery operated by Manitoba Hydro now, and they release pickerel into the river. And this pickerel, it's like a nursery. We have about 2 kilometer stretch of Saskatchewan River before it reaches the lake. It's a nursery for these pickerel that are released. They stay in there until they can go out in the lake. And if you drop a line into the river, you don't even have to sit there, 5 minutes and you're pulling fish out. So for a number of years, we were seeing a lot of what we considered abuse of the fishery, and some of it by our own members, but the fishing attracts like people from all around the province and even Americans in the summer. It's not unusual to see 40, 50 boats floating down the river in the summertime. But the abuse, the conservation officers weren't able to do much about it for people who are claiming Métis rights or treaty rights. And I was getting reports of people filling up the back of the truck and taking truckloads of fish out of our community and selling it, putting it on commercial limits else in other communities, or other abuse like that. So the Fishermen's Co-op asked the Chief and Council for support to request the province to put restrictions on place just on the river. So we were requesting that from the province for a number of years, and for a number of reasons, including consultation with the Métis, they were never able to get a restriction in place. So last year, we were ready to launch our Guardians program. The ice was coming in on, there's a bay on the river that freezes over. The majority of our river doesn't freeze anymore because the water moves too fast coming out of the dam, but there's a bay that freezes and it gets covered up with shacks and people fish there all winter. So as that was starting to freeze, we said we got to do something. Our Guardians program, we launched it. We put patrols out. We closed the river down. We told our community members, if you want to fish, like the lake is right there. We have a huge lake. We have lots of places where we can fish, but we're going to close the river to protect that nursery, because commercial fishing and fishing, for food is the lifeblood of our community. This is what sustains us, and we need to protect it. So we put up signs, we made pamphlets, we put out patrols. They were going. We got the message out recreational, through Facebook and just word of mouth. We put posters in the neighboring communities. And because our community had been asking for this, like there was the community support, there was some questions like, is this a real law? Well, my answer was yes, it's our law, And people asked, what are we going to do about it if I go and fish? Well, we had a membership distribution coming up in December. If it came to it, we could deduct fines from our members from their distribution. The only access to the ice is through the reserve. If anybody came to Grand Rapids, we could charge them for trespassing on a reserve land to get onto that ice and break our law. So we never actually had to seriously contemplate any consequences, because it was clear that, yeah, we did have options to enforce it. Like if you want to push it, then we'll push it too. We never had to go that far. It was respected.
It's amazing to me that sometimes in this work as guardians, you have to be vulnerable in that way, and you have to challenge your own communities. I know we were chatting yesterday, and there's not just challenges within your communities, but there's also a lot of challenges with, of course, the Crown government. Bobby's got some experience there.
Yeah. Well, when you compare the Guardian program from the east to the west, it's like night and day. I mean, I can only go on the positive side of it. And like I said, back in the early mid-90s, when we noticed the Atlantic salmon stock declining, as guardians, I was a guardian back then, we approached chief and council in our community, and we met, and Dehcho was there at the time, and we made a recommendation if we can ban gill nets in our area, because what they were doing, they were catching anything that was going through. So we, at the time, I was a young fellow as a guardian, figuring, see what happens. And then after the meeting, they came to us and said, yes, we're going to be banning gill nets here on out. So I had the pleasure of just looking out there in the evenings during the fall, seeing few community members going back to the way it was years ago, using flat bottom boats, spearing for salmon, trout, whatever selection that they can find out there, whatever they wanted or need, they would, instead of using gill nets and catching whatever's out there. Because sometimes younger people will go there, put a net out, and they'll just take the salmon and just leave the Atlantic cod laying there, the trout, whatever. So over the years, we find that people start to get used to it. And now, nobody in our community, in other nearby communities, use gill nets anymore to fish salmon. It's either angling or spearing. But like I said, it's a long process. It's going to take a long time before we can actually get everybody, especially the younger generation. They would rather go out there in the fall, sneer them, but we also let them know that, hey, this is not a river where you should be fishing because it doesn't meet the healthy stock. And the families or the relatives, whatever, will take them to a river where there's a healthy salmon stock, and they would fish there. And sometimes guardians might go up there with them just to see how they're getting along, see what kind of species, if it's a male or female, and they'll take samples of it. But other than that, I mean, they're slowly, gradually starting to understand what the Atlantic salmon really means to the Mi'kmaq people. And right now, like I said, we're at the Species at Risk Act. And there hasn't been any commercial fishing for that species over 30, 40 years, I think. So that's what we're hoping to bring back for our future, like my kids, my grandkids, so on down the road. So at least they'll have something to, instead of going to a grocery store, buying aquaculture salmon. So this way, at least we'll let them know they'll be able to fish them for many years to come.
I'm just curious, I know what fish mean to the Dene people. What do salmon mean to the Mi'kmaq?
Well, the Mi'kmaq people have been living off that salmon for thousands and thousands of years, and that's including the American eel too. And those are the two most species that the Mi'kmaq people thrive on and live on for years and years and years, many years back, and we're hoping the same thing down the road. Because, as I was saying yesterday, it's a delicacy for us when we call it, when an elder cooks eel stew. In our language, it means kadawabu. And when they make that, I mean, a lot of people, the younger people, are interested in it because they never grew up on it compared to me and older people. I have to say older people. I'm getting up there in age, but that's what the kids are starting to like now. We have a camp just about 15 minutes outside of our community, and we have an elder that comes in. He's also a guardian himself, and during the summer when they do get eels, he will show them how to skin them and prep them and cook them into eel stew. And the kids nowadays they're right glued to it, and they're very fascinated that we actually eat that growing up. But they tried it and they fell in love with it.
I'm sure all of us could turn this into a cooking panel, the Indigenous food panel here with our traditional foods. I'm quite curious about this Elders Council you have in Fort Good Hope, Bobby O, and how you're working with them in negotiating your Indigenous protected area. I was there in the summer briefly with Stephen Caffey as he met with the Elders Council, and the elders in the Satu are really important to the direction your nation is going. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I think like most communities, we go the extra yard to try to get proper advice from elders and try to include them right from the get-go when we're doing something. So a year ago, last March, when we began the final push to get an Indigenous protected area established, we immediately put together an elders program, and not only went over the history of the past 20 to 30 years of why they wanted it protected and all that, but every step of the way tried to get advice from them on how properly to do this. They were the ones who first told us that it's not just a question of protecting the area now, because it's changing. You know, why are the ducks leaving? I had another elder tell me 2 years ago, he was in the area in the summertime, and he went to an island that they used to camp on, a point coming off an island, which had huge timber on it. And it was one of the few places in the whole wetlands area that was good enough to camp on. And when he went there 2 years ago, the whole tip of that island had disappeared, including all the trees. They don't know where it went. It was gone. So the elders are keenly interested in knowing what is happening. So that's why I said at the beginning, it's not a question of just trying to permanently protect an area, but to work with experts, people who have traditional knowledge, Western science people, to see if we could understand in particular what climate change is doing and how it's negatively impacting on that area. Why are the waterfall leaving? Why are the songbirds leaving? We don't know. But we got to use the elders and try to figure that out.
Yeah. Well, so I'm aware of the time here. It's 11:30. We're done at 12, and I want to give the audience a chance to also perhaps make a short comment on either your Guardian program and how this is, you're hearing similar things here, or if you have a question for the panel, please feel free to ask any one of them at this point. We have a lady in the back there.
Merci beaucoup. Je suis beaucoup émue du garçon qui a parlé de pouvoir s'en sortir avec les gardiens, de se connecter avec la terre. C'est avec ça qu'il s'est sorti de ses problèmes personnels et des problèmes de la communauté qui sont maintenant dans toutes les communautés et qu'on a beaucoup de la misère avec nos jeunes et nos petits-enfants. Et c'est le groupe des gardiens qui vont nous relever. Et je suis fière d'être ici. Je vous félicite beaucoup.
So I don't speak French, but what?
If anyone else spoke French and they can do it better, feel free to step in. Oh, here, Virginie.
I do speak French. Okay. So she said she was very moved by Jarett's story that the Guardians helped him get rid of his problems and with drugs and other addictions and help him to get like a house for his family and help him move and get a better life.
Jarett, do you want to address?
and I forgot the part, sorry. She said also that Guardians is what's going to help communities advance and get better, because it's important for, they find it important for the land and care for the land.
Yeah, the Guardian program really did help me out with overcoming a lot of, like she said, some of the addictions that I had, and I really believe that getting caught up in and society, I guess you could take on some of these addictions, but in saying that, as a guardian and being out on the land and being able to walk the land and swim the lakes and boat on the rivers, being out there and having that connection to Mother Earth or the land, and a lot of your friends you surround yourself with. Clemens, he's one of my best friends, and he's the second hired guardian. We never had a really good friendship until he started working with me. So the Guardian program actually brought people in to help me with a lot of that stuff also, not just with the connection of the land and doing things for your nation, but it also brings people to you that could help you out also. And yeah, it helps that, and with the people that this job surrounded me with, it opened my eyes to see that overcoming a lot of those other addictions and stuff like that, you can do it. You can do it just within just that little bit of just becoming a guardian. That helped me out more than anything.
It's amazing that once you start working for your people and for your land, how much responsibility that carries in yourself to make change, right? To make change in yourself and make change in who you are, so that you can honor your responsibility. I think that's one of the beautiful things about this, listening and hearing about guardianship, is how people carry that honor to their ancestors, and how our stories are the continuation of our ancestral inherent rights and title to where we are from.
Just one more thing on top of that too, as being a guardian too, I always thought the youth would look up to me in a way, because I do go into the schools, and I'm just starting to go into the schools, and that really stuck into my mind too, that working with the youth is probably going to be some of the most important part of my work, to bring back on that culture change, and to really bring that sense of pride to them for who they are and where they come from. That really helped me out also to be a better role model for our communities.
I just wanted to back that up with the experience we had when we were planning our program. It was very important for us to have meetings with our elders, to talk about Cree laws, to talk about our culture and our values and our language, and to make sure that those were put forward as the foundation and the pillars of our Guardians program. And when I said it's taking our power back, it's showing that there is huge value in the knowledge that our elders have. It's holding that up, and it's carrying it forward for future generations. And it's showing them it's good to be Cree. It's good to be Misipawistik. And you know what? It's I just lost it.
That's all right. That's all right. It's It was reminding me of the movie Smoke Signals when Thomas was like, "It's a good day to be Indian." Anyway, we got just enough time, and I do want to hear from everybody else, but there's one other question.
Hi, Lena Collins, Wekano Nation. I'm a guardian for my nation, and one of the things that I found is like our land is speaking to us. It's awakening. Our ancestors left many marks within our territories, and I was walking along the Quock River about 2.5 weeks ago, and I was just recognizing the channels that they made. And now for myself to go back and re-explore it more, because there's more information there. And I think that's one of the things that is really powerful is our ancestors and what they've left for us to uncover. They knew we were up against a big battle, and now it's shifting, and that is really great news for our nations. Bye.
Did you still have a question?
Hello. This one's mostly for Jarett. I'm really, really curious. Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate you in your journey, and it's very moving, and I'd raise my hands to you, Jarett, and I'm just really curious. What do you have planned next? Are you planning to be a guardian for some time now? Now that you've grounded yourself with cultural ties to the land and gain that teaching back and know the way, do you think you'll go back to running heavy machinery again, or do you think you'll by chance venture over into the tourism side of things, or go back to college and learn some more good things? Or I'm just curious.
Jarett, just before you answer that, can we maybe evolve that question into the last question for everybody? Is just how do you hope, or how do you see, and what do you see your guardian programming, or you within guardianship evolving? And I can start with you, buddy.
I am so glad I'm not in that heavy equipment seat. I don't think I will go back to that. In saying that, like, throughout my journey and where I am today, I really believe that this job really helped me out. For me to go back to a different, or even approach different careers is not in my agenda at all right now. I really love what I'm doing. You know, to tell the truth, I was out on the land much as I could on my time off of work. The only difference now is I get paid and I carry around an iPad to collect data. So this is who I am, and that's where I belong, is out there. And saying that too, the only education that I have is just my high school diploma, and there is thought there to go back to school, and just because you know the Guardian program is advanced so much, especially working with our two other neighboring nations, and I just feel like at a personal level that I felt more confident stepping away from that administration work just because I don't have the school background for it. And so moving forward, I think I'm going to start creating an opportunity for me to go back to school. And it sure changed my mind now that after I finished high school, I thought I was going to go into some type of millwright program, but in saying that now after this job, there's most likely I'll be further in my education towards a biologist or some sort. Thanks for the question.
We'll get to the kind of the final round of questioning, so we can hear from everybody. Is just that idea of like how do you see it evolving for you or for your community?
Well, for our community, like I said, in the past, I spoke with you yesterday about this. Years ago, we wanted to get the two levels of governments working in place with us. That's regards to federal and provincial fisheries and environment. That's including federal and provincial also, Coast Guard and Parks Canada, for us to become unified rangers within the Unama'ki district. Not just monitoring the lakes and rivers, but also the land, which includes the white-tailed deer and the moose. But that fell in the creek. So, and also we also had Coast Guard involved with it too. But now in the last year or two, Coast Guard has approached us in regards to auxiliary Coast Guard people. So I have Guardians along with Esquis only. They're being trained next week for oil spill. And then down the road, we'll be search and rescue. So, and also we're slowly but gradually working with Parks Canada in regards to doing some science assessment on the rivers in the parks. So things are slowly but gradually opening up for us back home. And we're hoping that it's going to continue like that for many years to come. And as I mentioned yesterday, as for the Mi'kmaq people, we have a right to fish for food, social, ceremonial purposes. Some guardians believe they don't want to patrol or enforce regulations on their own community members, whereas all they can do is just monitor and just to see for science purposes what they're catching. And it's kind of a dark area when it comes to that, when it comes to treaty rights, and when you have people monitoring your own people. So we're hoping that maybe eventually down the road, once some of these guardians or rangers, you can call them, eventually move off the reserve boundaries, work with non-Indigenous groups, which is Dehcho, Department of Natural Resources, regards to patrolling the woods and the rivers and the land, not just in our community, but all over the island. But that's something I would like to see down the road for our guardians. Like some of them will do habitat, some will do science, but and it all depends on the individual themselves, what they want to do down the road, what's their passion. But like I said, I would like to see that down the road.
I want to touch on just quickly what you see your Guardian program evolving. It's like sounds like a lot has changed since it started.
My Guardian program has advanced quite a bit since 2016. We've just really focused on the hunting season, but we're starting to get more into water sampling and not just small, but all development around the territory. So we're doing a lot more water sampling. We're going to be starting a water sampling program. For where I want this program to be is I want us as guardians to be out there and doing everything that relates to wildlife, to environment, to waters. I really see our Guardian program going out and getting, for example, if the province wants samples on the creek there, it should be our right and our duty to go out and collect that for them. You know, as a Tahltan member going out and collecting waters from the Tahltan territory, I'm going to collect the best water sample as possible, and they're going to get the best sample as possible. And in saying that, I really see this Guardian program taking on that role and being able to take over a lot of that management areas and hopefully take over majority of it.
Right on. You're up, bud.
We actually just had our annual Dehcho County gathering in Fort Simpson, which brought together 3 people from each of the outlying communities and more. And within those 2 days, at the end of the 2 days, the communities came up with 5-year priorities. I wish I would have brought it. It's really pretty. It looks nice. It lays everything out. But to sum it up is essentially the Dehcho would like to see their Guardians program grow. Many of you here probably struggle with the same issues that we do in the Dehcho, but the patchwork of funding, the administrative burden of having to constantly report on funds, what we really need is multi-year stable funding, and this has been addressed multiple times. But with something like that, we would be able to employ more guardians. We have so much interest in people and in the communities to do guardian work. We had 30 people, as Herb had said yesterday, who went through a guardian training program. Half of them were employed on a pipeline replacement project, but we still need to create employment. We still want those people on the ground monitoring, being on the land. So definitely I foresee our Guardian and the Dehcho Guardian Stewardship Program growing with lots of hard work of the whole region, really being led by the community. Personally, my background is actually social work, and I'm now working in resources, but I like to say that the two are so tied together, that we are a very holistic people as Indigenous people, and that you can't separate things from each other. It needs to be holistic. And so personally, I foresee myself in the future being involved with Guardian programming in more of a health and wellness capacity. So, merci.
I'd like to see our program become permanent. And, funding is a big part of that. I'm working on Indigenous protected areas right now, proposed for our territory. And the Guardians, are a key piece of managing and monitoring that territory. Recently, I like what Jarett said about we can do it all. I met with the province in Manitoba. It's called the Department of Sustainable Development, and they have an integrated resource management team. So I had a meeting, and there was people responsible for wildlife management, protected areas management, conservation enforcement, environmental enforcement, Crown lands permitting, forestry, and I invited them all to come over and work for us when we take it all over. I think I might have put the fear in them, but really.
As I said earlier, the Dehcho from Fort Good Hope have a lot of catching up to do when it comes to Guardians, but we will get there. I mentioned earlier that we are confident we're going to get our Indigenous protected area done by this August. And as part of those negotiations, we're going to establish an initial 4-year Guardians program. We're negotiating the money for it. So thank God we trained a couple of people there, and if we're not successful, I'll maybe move down here.
I just add one more comment. I remember this in 2016, and I remember one presentation about the rangers in Australia where I want our Guardian program to be recognized as a career now, and have young people grow up wanting to be Guardians. That's what I really want our Guardians to be. And I remember that one lady in Ottawa saying that that was one of the things that she really took back is that she made a comment on saying one of the younger kids wanted to, I think they were like 2 or something like that, but they wanted to grow up to be a Guardian, You know, and that's what I guess all of our probably goal is, to have our guardian programs, to have our youth growing up wanting to be a guardian.
Well, I think that just about wraps it up for us. So for those of you here on the panel, I just want to say Masi and Welaling, and Heidi and Cree. How do I say thank you?
Now.
Holy. Masi cho. Anyways, thank you everybody. This was really interesting. This is one of the reasons I like doing filmmaking and working in documentaries, is an excuse to sit down and have a conversation about what inspires you and about what's important to you and your communities, and that connection that we all have to the land. So it was been a pleasure, and going forward, I really liked the idea of our laws. We talk about Canadian law all the time, but I really like Indigenous law. The Dehcho did it with the Indigenous protected area, Dehcho, and you were talking about your own laws, and us just asserting our own laws, and that becomes the norm, that becomes a reality. So thanks for that insight, Masi.
Thank you. Thank you for this wonderful panel. Don't worry that you don't have an advanced degree. Your degree is coming from your land. And I take your point, a fabulous point, where our healing is connected to the land. Just like our ranger friend from Australia said on that film, you know, we look after our country looks after us. And that's exactly what you're doing. And just on behalf of all of the delegates, we'd like to give you a small token of our appreciation for being on this panel. And we have the lovely Ginger. And with that, you will note that we are 5 minutes ahead of schedule. I'm pretty sure lunch is out there, so we'll break for lunch, and if we could come back a little bit early, like about 5 minutes early, so we'll come back at 12:55. Thank you very much. And we're done. Thank you.